Janiyad practices what he preaches.
I'm like, look, honestly, it's not easy. Like, it's tough.
So you segued brilliantly. So like that sounds like a common mistake that people would make when it comes to networking.
Don't ask a question that takes a long time to answer.
Welcome to the Let's Eat Grandma Career Warrior Podcast.
And welcome to the Let's Eat Grandma Career Warrior Podcast. Have you ever wondered how some people manage to climb the career ladder even without a college degree? Or how about build powerful networks that open doors to top companies like Amazon, Google, and Tesla? Today, we're diving into the secrets of networking success that anyone can use regardless of their educational background. We have a special guest who has cracked the code on building a world-class network without a degree. His name is Janiyad Iqbal. Janiyad is the founder of NoDegree.com and the host of the NoDegree podcast. The NoDegree podcast, where he interviews people without college degrees and has them share their stories so others can follow in their path. Janiyad is a career coach and professional resume writer who's helped many candidates, hundreds of candidates, and he has over, 300 recommendations at the bottom of his LinkedIn profile. Can't even think of half of the people in my network that don't even have 5. So that's just incredible. Janiyad has helped his clients get jobs at interviews at places like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Meta, Spotify, Tesla, TikTok, and many more. He is committed to shattering the stigma that college is the only path to success. So let's get ready to uncover some practical tips. We'll ask about some real life stories here in a bit because I believe that there's so much power to storytelling and just hearing some individual anecdotes here. But I want you to feel like you can boost your career and learn some strategies that can help you stand out. So you're not going to want to miss this episode. Without further ado, here's 335 of the Career Warrior Podcast.
Wow, that was such a good intro. Definitely one of the best intros I've ever gotten. So if you're still listening past that intro, I'm so excited to share how to network without a college degree. And the reason I love talking about this topic is because oftentimes people say, oh, I'm not going to college for the education, I'm going for the network, right? And that's the common thing about the MBA, right? The MBA is like, oh, I don't care about the education, I care about the network. But here's the reality. You're paying $100,000, $200,000 for that network. Think about it. You could build a network way cheaper and way quicker for the people that you want to network with.
Yeah, I love that. It's a great intro. I'm sure you've spoken to the same sort of people, Janiyad, but the folks who come to your resume service and they say, oh, I don't have the degree, I don't know how to show it on the resume, or they have this feeling of worry or anxiety that they don't have the degree as that one thing to unlock the path to success. But we're here to tell them, right, that that's not the only thing that's going to move them forward. In fact, you're telling us that no degree, no problem, right?
Yep, definitely. And here's the thing. If you have the work experience and you've done it, it's not as important. Now, will you lose out on some opportunities? Yes, there's some companies that are very closed-minded, some people that are very closed-minded. But there are plenty of people who actually focus on the experience. And the number one thing I tell people is you cannot focus on a negative. You cannot focus on what you don't have because you can't sell that. You have to focus on what you do have. And it doesn't matter if you have a degree. Sometimes people are like, oh, what if this guy has this certification? What if this woman went to this school? Or what if they worked at this company? It's like, you can't focus on this imaginary individual that has better qualifications than you because we do that to ourselves. Like, oh my God.
I do it all the time, man.
My competition and all that. What you have to do is, okay, here's what I bring to the table. Here's what I've done. Here's why you should choose me. Because when you think about other people, and you think about what you don't have, you're taking power and strength away from what you do have. And by doing that, you don't show up as the best version of yourself during the interview.
I love that. That makes so much sense. And I thought it'd be a great opener to just to ask you here, if you wouldn't mind sharing some stories or just a story from personal experience of how the networking led to job opportunity even without the degree.
Yeah, so I work with so many people, and LinkedIn and Twitter are very underrated tools. And honestly, you can use any platform because once you build relationships and once people know your character and your skills, now they can give you intros. So a lot of time when you look at a LinkedIn profile, a lot of people don't even scroll to the bottom, right? They look at the type of posts you make. They look at the types of comments you make. They don't necessarily scroll to the bottom. There was one of my workers. She did not have a college degree. I have a virtual events company. Before I started it, we used to hang out in this virtual event place where there were like couches and all that stuff you could click, and it would just be a Zoom call with a nice background. That's what it would be.
Nice.
And she would come in on her phone, and then she finally got a laptop. And she basically kind of never had a computer, really, right? She would just use her phone. But as she got used to it, she learned the technology, she learned the stuff, and then we hired her, and she ended up being a lead tech. And then after, she ended up being a community manager, started managing some Discords. And again, she did not have the college degree, but what she did had was she had a willingness to learn. She asked the right questions, and she did the best, and she took feedback well. So, and prior to that, she just worked at a grocery store and just different types of odd jobs.
I love that example. And I'm thinking of so many people and like even clients of ours who have built up these amazing experiences. I mean, like these 20, 25 year roles, and like they're currently like CMO or, chief whatever. And they still they're still like, gosh, Chris, I don't have the degree. Like, how should I get past that on my resume? Like, aren't they going to be worried? But it's like, think about what got you here so far. Think about all of these amazing talents and experiences and things like that. And that's where it's at there.
I come across those stories all the time. Like I'm the moderator of this subreddit, and someone with 19 years of experience, he was an engineering manager. He had an associate. He's like, hey, there are things shaking up at my company. I just want to be prepared. Am I going to have a shot? Can I get another manager role? Do I have to go back to school? And I'm like, what is going back to school? Like this engineering manager who has worked for 19 years at different engineering companies. Well, I think it was the same company. What is he going to learn in the last 2 years of that's going to be so relevant and so mind blowing, right? And but I come across so many people. Like some people will say, "Hey, my friend's like a C-suite at a startup. He doesn't think he could get another job again because he got lucky and got the college degree." And I was like, "Look, maybe you got lucky." But even if you get lucky, if you maintain a position and you do it well, you must be doing a lot of things right. And here's how I push back on a lot of people who think that. I ask them, what edge is a college kid that just graduated going to have over you? And that really helps them. And when people who are like, hey, why should I hire someone without a degree for someone with experience? I'm like, what advantage does someone with no experience coming out of college have over someone with 10 plus years who solves the problems that you want to do? And at the end of the day, you hire someone because they can do the job. Everything else is a bonus.
For the record, I'm not here to rip on your degrees at all. Like, that's not the purpose of this episode.
Definitely.
I myself have a degree, but I came out of college thinking I was hot shit. I was like, I learned that I did not know shit. And it's the experience that propelled me and gave me everything that I have today. And, the degree set a really good background, and I met some awesome people that helped build a network to start this company. Yet at the same time, like I look back in the last 10, 15 years, and it's like, it's the experience that got me there, and every single thing that I have, all those opportunities that I have today. So that's my stance. I feel like I have to share.
And my stance too, like I'm the founder of NoDegree.com. So people expect me to be anti-degree. No, I'm pro-education and I'm anti the cost. Because look, if you're getting a good price, you're going to a good college. I'm a big fan of state schools. I'm a big fan of community colleges. I'm a big fan of people who are choosing degrees because they know exactly what they want to get out of it. What I'm not a fan of are people who are charged 50, 60, 70K and they walk out with so much debt. They're walking out. The average student loan debt is like, I think somewhere in a little above 30K, but there are people who have 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 plus, 200 plus. And I find it very predatory because it's not like the professors are getting the money, right? The money's not going there. And it's like, think about it. If you're paying 200K for an education, you can literally go up to each professor as like, hey, dude, can I pay you like 2K to coach me privately? And you can get the same education one-on-one. So it's really unfair how it's done.
Bro, it's predatory. You're right. That's a good word. Yeah, I think like my wife, she's still, man, TMI here, but we're here to be open and conversational.
Yeah.
But my wife got these crazy mean calls from debt collectors saying like, you gotta pay, just like the school would pass it on to these debt collection agencies. And it's just like, that is what we don't realize that we find ourselves in the beginning when we're about to sign up for college. We're all excited about it. And then it's just like, you're left with that sometimes at the end. And it's really, it sucks. It's hurtful.
Yeah. And a lot of times when you have like this 80K in debt, you think, oh, if I get a 100K job, I'll be able to pay it off like 2-3 years. And it's like, no, if you get a 100K job after taxes, maybe let's say you get 70K. So you're hitting a little about 5K a month. But a lot of times these jobs are in cities that you have to pay decent rent in. So now you're paying rent, you're paying all these bills. So let's say your expenses are 4K a month, right? That's 48K. Even if you're super cheap, you can save 20 to 30K, maybe 40K a year. But that's if you're super cheap. If you're not super cheap and you're having to pay these things, it can take several years. And, there are people who are taking 10, 20, 30 plus years to kind of paying off. So I'm just all about, there are many forms of learning. Learning is more accessible than ever. Just figure out that which path is right for you.
Truth. Thank you. So let's talk about how to build a world-class network. I love your approach to networking. I think that's one of the best things to focus on for this episode here. So what are some key strategies that people can think about in how to build a world-class network, even if they don't have the degree?
So one thing I would say is if you're in a city, meetups. I before this podcast episode, I went to a meetup and I met some people. I actually met one of my friends that I know already, and I know him from LinkedIn, and I see him on regular meetups, and I went to the meetup because he told me about it. And then follow up. Too many people don't understand the fortune is actually in the follow-up. You'll meet 3, 4, 5 people, but the only ones that matter are the ones I actually follow up with or the ones that actually hit me up. I would say use online, that different platforms. Like I've met people through Twitter, I've met people through LinkedIn, I met people through TikTok and all that. But let's do LinkedIn because it's a professional network. Let's do that. Yeah. So when I started on LinkedIn, this is 5.5 years ago, I used to do 100 comments a day. And now these comments weren't like amazing, thanks, cool. And I would say I would refrain away from the AI comments because your goal is to build relationships, right?
Yes.
So the fact is when you network and you
from using AI to create comments is what you're saying.
Yeah, don't use AI to look, maybe you need an idea, maybe grammar checker and all that, but use your own voice because when you network and when they meet you, if you sound totally different and you're not saying in a world where rocket emoji and stuff in person, people are going to be confused. So I used to do 100 comments a day. I did it for months and months. That thing has still benefited me to this day. People still assume I do 100 comments a day. So even if I do 20 comments a day now, it still has that impact. Like, yo, Junaid is that guy that comments. Now what happens is some people will comment back, right? When I start creating content, some people will comment back. And people are like, yo, this is Junaid. And your headline goes across. So my headline says NoDegree.com. Your thing says the Let's Eat Grandma. I'm gonna be like, what is this eating grandma? I gotta go check this guy out. He has a good personality, but he's eating grandmas. What is this? So you want to leave comments. So if you're a product manager, you're whatever, have a good headline. Then people will view your profile. Yeah. People will check you out, and people will be like, hey, Chris, what are you up to? I like your podcast. And use this. And then let's say you listen to Chris's podcast. Just be like, hey, Chris, I'm a big fan of your show. I really love. And then now it's like, wow, thanks. Like when people message me, they're like, wow. Yeah. Like I'm like, oh my God, you listen to like I have over 300,000 downloads, but I'm like, still every note is special. So it's like those type of things, and you keep doing it. Then you start getting on calls, and then you ask for intros to other people. Like, hey, you know what? I'm trying to learn more about this. Do you have anybody who you should intro me to? And you keep doing that, and that's how you do it online. I can also share how you do it in person.
Yeah, let's go to in person 1 second, but I just have to echo and just the brilliance behind LinkedIn and how much opportunity there is there. Yes, headlines are so important because sometimes it's your picture and their headline is the only thing that they see. Yeah. And that could spark that curiosity to get people into that. And second, I just want to say like the commenting on someone's material, on someone's content is way more powerful than let's say just blanking, shooting out a bunch of soliciting connection requests, and I get those all the time. Like, just like, hey, I'm here. I see that you have this, and I'm like, it comes across as like I want to sell you something immediately. But a comment from the value forward, the value first approach that you're laying out just makes so much more sense to me.
And you know what's crazy? That I have 44,000 followers, but I'm still friends with the first 2,000. That first 2,000.
Yeah.
I'm friends with them. Like, one of them taught me how to write resumes. He taught me how to increase prices. And I've stayed at their houses. Like, when I go to Canada, I can meet these people. They've met me on this side of the world. And so that first 2,000 will just help you in so many ways. And what I say is leave thoughtful comments. Show that you read your post. Leave something. Leave a different perspective. Further add on. And then you never know. Sometimes it's not even the poster. Someone else reads that comment and they like it, right?
Yeah.
And keep doing that, and you're gonna say it pays dividends years down. Like, I've met people on Twitter, I've met people way bigger than me, and it's just interesting because it just all started through comments.
So one thing that we just had Maya Grossman on the last podcast. We had a really good
See, I know her from LinkedIn. We hopped on a call years ago.
There you go. Case in point. And like we were talking about the same thing. It's like LinkedIn, how to build a connection, and her approach was really interesting. It's like, think very carefully about the people who are in the position that you want to be in. Like, maybe it's like one or two steps ahead of you, and reach out. Again, you're not selling something, you're not asking for a job. That's really important, not in the very first message to ask for a job, but to ask for advice, conversational advice on how they've gotten their position. Wondering if you have anything to add to that, or other approaches for reaching out cold, per se.
So here's what I'll say. Don't ask a question that takes a long time to answer. So, for example, just because a question you ask is very simple, it has complex answers. So if you're going to ask for advice, ask for specific advice. Be like, hey, how'd you become a product manager in payments? What thing did you do? Versus, how did you become a product manager? Then it's like an hour-long story. Like, yo, I did this, I did that. So what I would say is, and also before that, search them up. Look at their posts. Look at their blogs. See if they've been on any podcasts. Listen to them. So then when you ask, you don't ask the same questions that get asked all day long.
Truth.
Right? And then the other thing I want to say is, the reason you don't ask for a job, because if someone asks me for a job, I'm not like, yes, I'm this job store, and I've been sitting on this job for 3 months. I didn't know who to give it to.
Jobs
but
are us.
thank you so much. So here is this job. That's not it. The fact is, when I get a job, I'm going to go to my network. I may be like, hey, Chris, do you know anyone who's looking for this? Right? Like, I know someone who's hiring for that. So the fact is, you need to build relationships with people so that when they get jobs, they think of you. And that's why you need to be very specific about what you're looking for, and you need to be targeted, and you need to be engaged. And I would say, depending on who you reach out to, if you're reaching out to someone like me, engage with me a few times, then reach out. If you're engaging with someone who has like, maybe 1,000 to 5,000 followers, hey, few comments, you're good. If you're engaging with someone who's like 100K, you're going to need to build more relationship. Their inboxes are crazy because they're getting so much in sales that they're going to be like, look, I'm really busy. Like, and same thing, if someone just newly interacts with me, I'll be like, hey, are you looking for free advice or something? I'll be like, free advice, go to a podcast. Paid advice, here's how it works. However, if someone has interacted with me for some time and they're supporting me, I'll be like, cool, I'm more than happy to hop on an intro call and answer some initial questions within reason. So it's all about, you have to think about who you're going for and the value you need to bring. And put yourself in their shoes. Like, is their inbox crazy? How much time? Like, last week, I spent 3 hours answering comments from my post and the comments I missed for like the last 2-3 weeks. And then, like, that's how long it takes. These things take time.
Yeah, it absolutely does take time. It's not something you can have like a quick hack, or, people are tempted to just use AI, which AI is the most lovely tool ever. I use it every day, but not to build those human connections and relationships. So you put in the time, you put in the effort. That's an inspiration for me, man. So that's awesome. One thing I'll echo on before asking you about in person. I love the fact that you said we're not I can't just hand out jobs. I'm not Chris Jobs. I'm not a job genie. But I had this one person who reached out to me for an informational interview, which basically is the concept we're talking about, which is you solicit advice. It's not anything else. But the person she was a really smart young lady. She just asked me the question, like, do you know anyone who I should talk to? It's like a really simple question at the very end of the 30-minute conversation. And just a light bulb went off in my head. I put her in touch with a person who I knew in my own community. Yeah. And eventually that led to her getting contract work with that person who gladly hired her. So you are right, just being open-minded, not so like, oh, this is the person that's going to get me the job. No, just like, who else do you have? Like, is there anyone else who you recommend I can speak to?
Yeah.
So,
and one piece, you know what? I'll save this piece after the in-person.
Okay. Well, I'll remember that so I could make sure you hit it. But let's talk about in-person though, because I think LinkedIn's genius. Some people have an aversion to online. Sometimes I do. It can stress me out. It seems like you don't have that problem, Junaid.
Yeah.
But what about the people who just want to truly use in-person networking as their go-to?
And here's the thing. I think you should always use both, because I use online to meet people in person. I use in person to connect them online. So just realize that you have to use both. And if you're not using both, you're going to hurt yourself, because you meet people maybe once every few months, year, but I can interact with you all the time. I can interact with you multiple times so that when we meet up, it happens. And look, we're gonna meet up next week. That's the funny thing. We're gonna meet up next week, but it's because of something online. So I would say you have to leverage both, and you have to tie it together, because networking is like this web where you have to connect the dots.
Yes.
Now,
just a quick anecdote. Like, I hated online, and it sometimes it gives me stress and stuff. But back when I was in like the dating world, I was like, I'm never gonna freaking get on one of these stupid apps because you get lost in the mess. But I met my wife on Tinder at all the places, and I hated it with a passion. I was like, I'm never going to get on this stupid app ever again. But it's funny because I knew her before, like just through my high school, which is, again, it's that in person, but it's the online, to your point, that, brought us together. And it's like, oh, I have that connection. We have the same teachers, blah, blah, blah. But, bringing in some of the dating analogy too, because there's so many commonalities there. But bro, I hated online. It was like the thing that stressed me out so much until I realized that's what brought me like one of the best things in my life.
Here's what I'll tell people. I know why you hate online. We hate the traditional thing that Tinder is used for. So you hate what it's marketed as, but just realize that even within all apps, there are corners that act differently. There are people who use Tinder in a way that you don't hate it, just like how you used it. So I tell people to approach it like, yes, I hate the general concept, but here's how I will use it. Because the beauty is you can use it however you want. So now let's go in person.
Exactly.
So people say they go to get an MBA for the network, right? And let's say you're you get a cheap MBA, $80K. Now, what I'll say is one of the best pieces of networking advice is find one person, say, hey, I really like what you're doing. I'm really trying to grow in my career. Would you be open to meeting up for dinner next week? It's on me. And look, this is something that you could do like a $50, let's say $100, because things are expensive. So $100, you do that once a week, you're spending $5,200 in a year. You do that for 4 years, you're still only spending $20K. I guarantee you'll get better than a $20K ROI from that.
Love that. How come I've never heard that before in my life? Like just a dinner once a week, and it's exponentially cheaper than the degree there.
You know why you haven't heard it? Because they don't teach that in the MBA. They tell you come to our MBA and then come meet the people. But this way, like, look, I'm busy, but if someone's cool and they tell me like, hey, I'm trying to break into product, I'm a founder who's looking to do XYZ, dinner's on me, whatever restaurant, like, and if you have a budget, just be like, hey, I have a budget of $100, just because most, you don't want someone rack up your bill to 500, right? But this is a great way that you can meet a lot of people and just follow up. And the ones you really connect with, you start off so differently. Because I meet so many people who network, they don't follow up, and I'm busy, and it's like, yo, I'm not trying to do all this. But if someone's like offering me dinner, 100%. Now, look, you have to be a little mindful if you're a woman. You have to be mindful of safety reasons. So if you don't feel comfortable in all that, at any point, feel free to pull out. Yeah. But use this, get intros, and then from that dinner, just be like, hey, do you know anybody else who I could be talked to? Dinner's on me. I'd really appreciate it. And that, and then how you want to connect this, the one piece that you have to connect this
Sure.
is networking is not about yourself. It's about others. Yes, we do it for ourselves, but you have to do it for others. What I have found is the more I give, the more I receive. However,
Truth.
you have to give within reason. You also have to,
Yeah.
it's kind of give, and you have to get. Now, if I gave everyone $1,000 in networking, I'd be phenomenal in networking, right? Everybody would love me, this and that. I'm just going to run out of money by next week, right? Now, however, if you're like, yo, I can get you Bill Gates, I can get you Mark Zuckerberg, I can get you Michael Phelps on your podcast, right? These are all people without degrees who have done very well for themselves. I can get you Michael Jordan has a degree, but like Michael Jordan, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, hey, but you just got to pay $1,000 because you got to go to the conference. But you know, if you go in, I know the guy, I can hook you up. I would pay $1,000 for that. So there are some opportunities and some things that are worth $1,000. Like, right, you're going to a conference, you have to pay the tickets, but that is worth that ticket price, whatever it is. However, we have limited time and resources. We can't just go giving out money, just going to every conference here and there. We have lives to live. Now, to get around that, you have to find something that you can give that's low cost to you, but high value to someone else. And oftentimes, that's information. The right information to the right person at the right time is worth a lot of money. And oftentimes, it only takes a message. It only takes maybe 5 to 10 minutes, and that goes a long way. So I'll give an example. So one of my clients, he worked at a car dealership. I said, when you network, tell people, hey, I used to work at a car dealership. If you're ever buying a car, let me know. I'll help you negotiate. I'll tell you how to go through the process.
Yeah.
When I bought a car, I called him. He was like, all right, this is exactly what you do. Say you're going to put down a deposit. If they try this, just say no, and get it done like that, and then meet them. And it worked. I got my car. But in that time frame, he's saving people thousands of dollars. He's saving them hours of headache. So you got to think about, what things do you know a lot about? It could be gardening. It could be this software. It could be that you know a lot about podcasts. Like, I know a lot about cameras. I know a lot about microphones. I know a lot about podcasts. I'll share that info. So think about things that you have so much knowledge in. Share that. Like, for example, another one of my clients got a perfect score on the SAT. So he's a young kid. So I told him, tell parents, like, hey, as he's networking, just be like, hey, I got a perfect score on my SAT. Whenever your kids are going, studying for the SAT, I can help them. I can at least guide them and tell them the study plan.
It's not even bragging, it's helping. It's like adding
helping.
value that way.
Yeah.
Like,
and
awesome.
And then simple ones. Like, I'll tell people, hey, if you're ever in New York City, like, if you need help, if you need restaurant recommendations, hit me up. Hey, if you're ever in New York City, need help using the subway, like, hit me up, like, text me. And the funny thing is, it's like, they don't even use me for that. They'll just hit me up and say, I'm in New York City. Like, let's do something. So think about this. Like, New York City is a competitive city, but my connections, like, remember me when they come in. So if you're in these big cities and all that, like, you'd be surprised that, like I went to Bentonville, Arkansas, and I met one of my friends, and he took me to a great restaurant and all that. Because it's like, yes, I can go on TripAdvisor, I can go on Reddit, find these things, but I'd rather ask someone local that I know.
Yeah. And I have to say, y'all, I mean, Janiyah practices what he preaches, because the very first, like, when I was meeting with him for the introduction for this, we just started spouting about podcast advice, and we started going back and forth, and like, he had so many gems and words of wisdom on how to boost your podcast and production and all that kind of stuff. And this was like the first 10 minutes. So, man, you practice what you preach, which is really awesome, about sharing things and helping other people lift our fellow community up. So that's what we're about.
Nah, look, I like sharing info, because at the end of the day, if I lift you up, your podcast does better. You have me on as a guest when you're bigger, and it's just like a win-win. And then I have you on as a guest, but it's all about, like, a rising tide lifts all boats.
Yeah. And that mentality that you said about just like, it's about the other person. I think that's great. So, but two follow-up questions to this. The first follow-up question is about the follow-up. You said the fortunes in the follow-up. So for one, what recommendations do you have about how to follow up after a networking event or situation? And the second question I'll ask is about common mistakes people are making when it comes to networking. But let's hear first about the follow-up.
So you have to think about the context in which you met them and how you would follow up. If they gave you advice, use that advice. So oftentimes, like, I'll recommend books to people. The people who follow up like, hey, I bought, picture of them with the book. Hey, I bought the book, looking forward to reading it. And then they follow up again saying like, hey, here's what I learned from the book. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this. Do you have any other recommendations? People help those who help themselves. The thing about careers is I don't mind helping you up the mountain. I just don't want to have you on my back. And that's what it is, that you have to do your work, to do the things. And then follow up, like, think about how can I help them? How can I make their life easier in some capacity? For me, honestly, I appreciate people who leave out comments. People who show up, like, that means a lot. Like, hey, I helped you out and you're here helping me out. That means a lot. And it's like that reciprocity. So think about how you can make their life easier in any capacity. And that's why you have to have conversations and you have to focus on building relationships.
Yeah, and no AI follow-ups there, not like follow up with this person and just give some generic thing. It's like, what was the connection you had during that conversation? What did you talk about? What was the thing that really resonated? It takes real work to kind of think about what those things are and to reflect. So,
yeah, for example, I had someone reach out to me today. He said, hey, how are you doing? And I'm like, look, honestly, it's not easy. Like, it's tough. Like, you have a business and stuff. It's like, it's not easy. Like, I'm not out here with 1 million TikTok followers rating in money. Like, I'm working 7 days a week, right? I'm doing everything I can to grow the business. He's like, hey, you know what? You should, work less, focus on your health. And I was like, look, trust me. I want to be at the gym for like 4 or 5 hours every day. That would be the dream. But sometimes it's like, look, we have limited time and resources, and it's like we have to make those sacrifices even though we don't want to, right?
Yeah.
There's only limited time in a day. And then when I went through his activity, he never engaged with any of my stuff in 6 months. So it's like, I don't really have much interest. I'm not saying you have to engage with my stuff every day, but I'm not going to have much interest in someone who's out here never engaged with my content, just giving me some generic advice that's not helpful. It's like, that's not what I need. Like, I know I need to, I know I need to go work out. I know I need to work less, but it's like, unfortunately, I'm not in the position to do so.
Yeah. So you segued brilliantly. So like, that sounds like a common mistake that people would make when it comes to networking. It's just like, what would that be? Like asking for too much too soon? Let's hear about some of these mistakes.
Here's the thing. If you're giving advice to me, understand the context that you give advice to. Like, that's not bad advice. It's just, that's not advice that I can apply right now, right? And it's also, it's coming from, look, if that person had engaged with me, I'd be like, hey, this person cares. But since I have a decent amount of followers, I get so many who just hit me up every 6 months. It's like, dude, honestly, you just clog up my inbox. Versus the people who engage with my stuff on a regular basis. When they say, hey, if you say, hey, I'm like, yo, what's up, Chris? Let's go, let's talk. It's going to be something cool. It excites me. Where it's like, it's draining when I get someone who's like, ask me how my day is. And it's like, dude, it's like, I'm working all day. Like, what do you want me to say? And it's like, did you expect me to say, hey, this is good? It's like, this, like, it's tough because we as people in career space, like, I've helped a lot of people for free. And, some people are amazing and some people are not, right? And some people just want that advice. So oftentimes, like, most people feel like they're transactions. Like, oh, you saw me, you want your advice out of me, and that's it. And then just realize that you are talking to a person. You are talking to someone that goes through emotions and all that. And if you understand their emotions, they will love you. Like, if someone's like, hey, like, I see that, I appreciate that grind. I appreciate you. Like, one guy, I reached out to him because I was on his podcast years ago. He's liking my stuff. He's not leaving a comment. He's liking my stuff. So I'll be like, hey, what's up? He's like, yo, you're an inspiration and all that. Like, that's inspiring, right? Like, he's out here supporting me. So I find that support the people that you're reaching out to, even in the smallest ways. The other thing that I'll tell a lot of people is that they're not doing enough research. It's such, like, I'll get people who are like, hey, how do I break into, ask me for advice, and it's like, literally in my link in bio, there's a podcast, and it's literally free, versus someone who's like, hey, I listened to your podcast, I learned XYZ. Cool. Because oftentimes I'll tell people, or they'll be like, hey, do you have a podcast episode covering X? Then I'll be like, oh, perfect. You know what? I'll send you the link.
It's specific, like you said earlier. It's specific too.
And it shows that they did research, right? And like other things that people will do, if you scroll down, I'm an assistant wrestling coach. I put it on my profile. So people were like, hey, I used to wrestle. I used to do this. Then it's an instant connection. Like, I'm like, because wrestlers have this thing, right? We just get beat up on the mat. It's a tough sport. That's something we can connect on. So I'm part of Toastmasters. So look at their profile. Like, so many people, it's clear they have not read my headline. They're like, what do you do? Oh, where are you from? And it's like, dude, it's in my profile. And I'll be kind of harsh. I'll be like, dude, it's literally in my profile. Like, I'm all about like, hey, I'm being friendly. But if I don't have time for people who just say hi. Because on Twitter, the thing is hi. And it's like, every time I've said it back, it's a brain dead conversation by someone who has done absolutely no research. But
True.
Just do that little research. Think of them like a person. Don't ask basic questions. Ask specific questions. And if they have any resources, consume them. Because then it just shows that, hey, this person invested time into their resources. They've invested time into themselves. Hey, it won't hurt if I spend some time in them, because here's the reality. I'll give advice to most people. They won't follow it.
There are 30 possible resume mistakes stopping you from landing interviews. And please, whatever you do, don't submit your resume to another bot who won't listen. As a top resume service, we've helped thousands of job seekers. And with our expert eye, Let's Eat Grandma will transform your resume into a job-winning masterpiece. Don't wait. Submit your resume to Let's Eat Grandma now for a free critique.